Starting now.
Hey everyone.
Hey, welcome back to episode 16 of Fabulist Duo Short Stories.
I hope everyone enjoyed last week because I did.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't love getting over a hangover?
That's what it was, yes.
Yes, yes.
I was literally sitting here like, what was it again?
Yes.
Yes.
No one likes having their house filled with ants. Yeah. But I hope you guys have been enjoying the stories. And again, reminding everyone that you can listen on Google Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, and Listen Notes.
That's all of them?
Yeah, that's all of them for now.
I will never, ever learn anything other than Spotify.
Yeah, I get that. But, I mean, Google's like a big one because it's like Google.
Yeah. All right, so do we have anything else to say or should we start?
I think we're just gonna start.
I think we're just gonna.
I think we're just gonna start.
Yeah. I think we're just gonna.
Yeah. I'll go ahead. I'll start.
Oh yeah, you go ahead. Yeah.
So last week I gave Michelle the prompt. A group of people go on a camping trip and end up getting hunted by Bigfoot. So I don't know if this is going to be a comedy, because to me that sounds hilarious. But Michelle's story is called A Big Problem. It was finally time for the big family camping trip, and June was packing all the things she would need for the trip. This was an annual event that her family had been doing since she was 5, and she was 9 now. It would be her mom, dad, older brother, aunt, uncle, and 3 of her older cousins. She would be the youngest. She loved going to see her aunt and uncle because they couldn't help but baby her, giving her lots of sweets and presents. Even she had to admit that she was a little spoiled. June, are you finished packing? Your aunt and uncle are here already, her mom called to her from downstairs. With the speed of light, she ran down the stairs as fast as she could to greet them with the cutest face she could manage. Hi, Auntie Lily. Hi, Uncle Stephen, she chimed at them. Her aunt was the first to acknowledge her. Oh, June, look at you. You've grown so much since I last saw you, she cooed over the little girl. Behind her aunt, June could see the other kids roll their eyes at her as she plastered a huge smile on her face. You just saw her last week, one of her cousins, Mark, called out. Well, she's a growing girl, she said, pinching June's cheeks. Say hi to your cousin's kids. She scooted June over to the other kids in the minivan and went to help with packing the car. Hi, guys, she said, giving them a blinding grin. Ugh, you know that won't work on us, Mark grimaced. You would make a really good brown-noser one day, said May, the eldest. May always said weird things. What's a brown-noser? June asked. Just as May was about to explain her quip, a hand flew over her mouth and the face of April appeared from the depths of the minivan. You'll find it when you're older, she answered. May and April were only a year apart in age, and they were born in the same months they shared with their names. Apparently, her own mom thought that was cute, so June was named after the month that she was born in, and her brother was named August after the month he was born in. Mark was born in October. They finally finished packing everything, and June decided to ride with her cousins in the minivan while her mom, dad, and brother would ride in their family car together. Despite how spoiled she was by their own parents, June got along with their cousins. When we get there, do you want to see who can catch the most frogs before dinner? Mark asked. Yeah, I want to take one home this time, June said excitedly. You know, if you handle frogs too much, you'll start to get warts on your hands, May said. June's eyes widened in shock. What are warts? She asked. They're gross lumps that can form on your hands, May explained. They're not a big deal, All you need is a bit of ointment to get rid of them, April sighed. May shot her sister an annoyed glance. Scaring June was her favorite thing to do. Yeah, but they take some time to go away, and in that time, if you're still in the woods, they can attract all kinds of things to you, she continued. April frowned at that one, not knowing if that was a lie or not. Like mosquitoes? Mark asked. No, things like Bigfoot. April was about to open her mouth in protest when May covered it before she could speak. But Bigfoot isn't real, June said. That's what they want you to think. May leaned in closer to June with her hand still covering April's mouth. They keep it a secret from normal people like you and me because they don't want to hurt the camping industry, she whispered to June. April threw May's hand off her mouth. Camping industry? Does that even make sense, May? She tisked, smacking her sister with her travel pillow. May and April were laughing, while June was still thinking about the existence of Bigfoot, and Mark was playing games on his phone. The rest of the ride was peaceful with the kids, playing I Spy games and pointing out farm animals to each other. They finally arrived at the camp by afternoon, and everyone began working together to unload the vehicles. As Mark set down his tent in the campsite, June ran up to him with a frog in her hand. Look, I caught one, she said, shoving it in his face. Hey, no fair, you can't start catching them while I'm still putting up my tent, he protested. That doesn't matter, I'm still ahead of you, she boasted, twirling around with the frog in her hands. You better put it back or you're going to get warts, he said to her. She stopped mid-twirl and gave him a fearful look, then put the frog in the grass and watched it huff away. Satisfied with the fear in her eyes, Mark set his focus back on his tent. Looking around the camp, everyone was busy doing stuff. Her mom and dad were setting up the fire, her aunt and uncle were preparing food, and the rest of the kids were putting up their tents. No one was paying any attention to her. She wandered over to where her dad was by the fire pit trying to get it going, while her mom went off to find firewood. She squatted down next to him to watch what he was doing. What you doing? She asked. Trying to get this fire going, he sighed. He was blowing on the embers that he had, but to no avail. What if I kicked dirt on it? June asked, and before her father could stop her, she had already begun to kick the dirt on the embers, effectively putting them out. She stared at the smoldering sticks in the fireplace and giggled. Sorry, Daddy, guess you have to start again. June, why on earth would you do that? Her father said, looking at her angrily. June didn't expect him to react that way. Usually when she teased him, he would just laugh and ruffle her hair. Maybe she went too far this time. She gave him a big smile, positive that would get her out of trouble, but his expression only grew angrier. Go help your brother with the tents. He turned back to the fire and dismissed her with a wave of his hand. She was shocked and a little hurt. How could he not forgive her? She didn't know that the dirt would put out the fire. It's not fair for him to be mad at her. With tears in her eyes, she went off to go find her mother. If she went to her brother August to try and garner his sympathy, he wouldn't even give her a second glance. She had been wandering around in the forest for some time, and was getting more and more frustrated as she wasn't able to find her mother. She was mad that her dad got mad at her for something that wasn't her fault, and she was mad that she couldn't go to her brother for attention, and she was mad that no one wanted to play with her. She kept walking forward until she came to a small clearing in the woods. In the middle of the clearing, there was a fallen tree with a trunk as wide as the minivan. A soft "wow" escaped from her mouth. She ran over to the tree trunk and began trying to climb it, but she just couldn't find a grip to grab anywhere. She circled it looking for some kind of foothold. Nothing. The trunk was strangely flat and smooth. It seemed hollow at first glance, but when she tried to get into the middle of it, she found that she was unable to clear the plants and leaves that were blocking the entrance. She was pulling at the grass and chunks of dirt more aggressively now until she finally gave up with the whine. She feebly threw the handfuls of dirt still left in her fists at the clogged opening of the trunk and rose to her feet. She tried again to climb it, and when she failed, she was furious. With a cry of rage, she kicked the side of the log with all her might, causing a strange vibrating sound to reverberate throughout the log. Just then, she heard her mom call from the other side of the trees. "June, lunch is ready." With that, she ran off in the direction of her mom's voice, forgetting about the boring log. When she arrived at the campsite, her dad handed her a plate of food with a smile on his face. "Here you go, honey," he offered. June took the plate of food without even looking at him and huffed as she stomped past him to take a seat on her tiny pink lawn chair already set up next to the fire pit. Her brother was right next to her with his own food already eating. "Where did you go?" August asked as June sat down. "None of your beeswax," she said, sticking her nose in the ear and refusing to look at him. He was the eldest of all the kids at 14 years old, and it bothered her how grown-up he thought he was. "We needed help setting up all the tents and stuff. You should try to be more useful," he said with a mouthful of food. It was irritating enough that he had just called her useless, but he didn't even look at her while he did it. Everyone was being so mean to her today, her dad and now her brother. She was beginning to wonder why she even went on this trip in the first place. She huffed and took her food to her tent that was already set up and locked herself in there for the rest of the afternoon, refusing to come out until dinner time. June's eyes fluttered open to see that the sun had set and it was pitch black. She must have fallen asleep at some point. She opened her tent to peek outside to see if anyone was awake. There, standing at the campfire, was her brother and her cousins, probably telling ghost stories. She crawled out of the tent and zipped it shut behind her, then walked over to the campfire. As she got closer, she could hear their conversation. "What are we going to do?" Mark asked in a panic. "I don't know," August responded in an equally panicked voice. "If we can't call the police and we can't radio the park rangers, how are we going to get help?" April was almost screaming at this point. "Calm down, April," May said with her hands on April's shoulders. "What happened?" June asked as she approached the campfire. All their heads whipped around at breakneck speed to look at her, startling her and stopping her in her tracks. What happened?" she asked again, voice shaking. All their faces mirrored each other as they looked at each other in silence, except August's. "The adults are missing, and there's claw marks everywhere," he said, stone-faced, staring at her. June's legs started to shake, and she ran to her parents' tents. In the firelight, she could see a gaping hole torn in the side of the tent. The top of the rip was shaped like 3 jagged points, as if it had come from something's claws. She dropped to her knees, and before anyone could say anything to comfort her, they all heard a low vibrating sound that reverberated through the entire campsite. June slowly turned around to face her brother and cousins and saw a giant hairy creature taller than any human standing on the other side of the campfire from the others. At first, she thought it was a bear, but it was standing completely upright with huge shoulders and front-facing feet. Its large hands hung low at its sides, and it seemed to be staring at every single one of them, individually taking them in, until it laid eyes on June. June screamed as soon as she saw its eyes were on her, and in response the others screamed as well. Nothing but the echoes of their screams could be heard ricocheting off the trees surrounding the campsite. And the thing lunged over the campfire straight towards June, knocking down all the other kids. In a second, it was on top of her, growling and drooling on her face. It picked her up by her hair and slung her over its shoulder. June's face was buried in smelly hair as she felt the thing move through the woods. Branches of trees were scraping her skin as it ran until finally it stopped and dropped her to the floor. As she hit the floor, she heard familiar voices. "June!" they called almost at the same time. She looked over to see her aunt and uncle with her parents all tied to the trees on the other side of the clearing they were in. Her eyes scanned her surroundings and she recognized where she was. There in the center of the clearing was the giant log from earlier that she had kicked. Just then, the thing grabbed June by the back of her neck and she let out another blood-curdling scream. She could hear her parents and her aunt and uncle sobbing with worry for her, begging the thing not to hurt her. All it did was snort and begin to lift June off the ground by her neck. Before her feet completely left the floor, something flew out of the woods and hit the thing in the back of the head, causing it to drop her back down. "June, come over here now!" August called out to her from the trees. Without a second thought, she jumped to her feet and ran as fast as her little legs could take her towards the sound of her brother's voice. She ran into his arms, and he pushed her behind him, holding a stick in front of him, as if that would help him against the giant, hairy monster. "What did you do, June?" he yelled behind him at her. She was completely shocked at the commitment he had to blaming everything on her, and she yelled back, "How is this my fault? It clearly wanted you. What did you do when you disappeared earlier?" He yelled. The monster was coming closer and closer, as slow as possible, almost deliberately. I came here earlier and I tried to climb the log," she said. And I tried to dig a hole in the dirt in the side, and then I got frustrated and kicked it really hard." "Apologize to it," he yelled at her. Bewildered at his solution, she blurted out, "What? You want me to apologize to it?" It grunted again as it was getting closer, and the two were backing up at the same speed. Then it ripped a branch off a tree and lurched towards them. "Just do it, you little brat," he screamed at his sister. "I'm sorry, Mr. Hairy Monster. I'm sorry I kicked your log and ruined your flowers," she screamed at the top of her lungs. With that, the monster gave what sounded like a satisfied snort, dropped the branch in its hand, and walked back to the center of the clearing, where it entered the hollow trunk and left them all alone in the silent forest. They all emerged from the trees, back to the campsite, all shaken to their core, eyes wide in horror and legs shaking. Taking a seat by the still-lit campfire, the minivan had pulled up next to the campsite, followed by some park ranger vehicles. May, April, and Mark got out of the minivan, followed by a bunch of park rangers. It seemed like August had sent them to get help. "Are you folks okay?" One of the park rangers went to talk to the adults while the others were surveying the damage done to the camping equipment. No one answered the park ranger. They were all just huddled together, trying to regain their sense of reality. "I don't think so, sir," August finally said. June walked over to her parents and her aunt and uncle while the park ranger spoke to August. "Daddy?" She started putting a hand on his knee. "I'm sorry I put out the fire earlier while you were trying to start it," she said weakly. She turned to her aunt and uncle. "And I'm sorry I didn't help with the camp setup. And thank you for setting up my chair and tent for me," she finished. The adults were smiling at her with tired expressions and tearful eyes when a park ranger walked up to them. "So, This part of the park was supposed to have been closed off. It seems like someone forgot to close the gate. We're going to have to pay you a settlement, so you keep everything you saw here a secret. The ranger was met with blank stares. We'll help you clean up the camp, and you can set up with a hotel in town. Then we can do the paperwork tomorrow. He tipped his hat and turned to help the other rangers pack up the camping equipment. Don't want to hurt the camping industry, he muttered as he walked away. Why is there a camping industry? Like, why is there a whole camping industry?
Yeah.
Like, it's just a thing for the camping industry. No, it's not. Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. There's a camping industry. Yeah.
Always the camping industry. Everything. All of it.
Everything's
always.
an industry. Yes, what'd you think?
That was hilarious. I'm just like, I pictured Bigfoot grabbing her by her hair and just slinging her over his shoulder. And I died inside laughing. Because I'm just like, yeet.
Yeah. I was like, how do I make it violent? I know.
And then it just turns out that violence made it hilarious.
Yeah.
As it does. But that was hilariously good. And like, I like that, you know, the adults were taken away first, so the kids are there all like spooked and just, what do we do? What do we do? Oh my god, what do we do? And it's like, you know?
Yeah, I was, you know, like, what do you do when you have a complaint against someone's kid? You go talk to the parents, right?
Exactly. So you kidnap all the parents, tie them to trees, and then kill their daughter by slinging her over your shoulder by her hair.
Yeah. Just like, okay, y'all, I need to talk to you about your kid. Can you please stop screaming? All right, I'm gonna go get your kid. All right, here's your kid.
Here's the kid. She knows what she did.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I like that it was living, like, in that log thing.
Yeah.
Like, the size of their minivan. Or, like a minivan or, like, an RV?
Like a minivan. So it's a log, and it's the thickness of a minivan, but it's, like,
oh, the
long,
thickness of a minivan.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I just thought the
Was that
entire
not
log...
evident?
I thought the log was, like, the size of a minivan, like, in general.
I should write thickness.
And I was just like, okay, that's, that poor Bigfoot is crouching.
Yeah.
Bigfoot be crouching in there, just like, eh.
I literally, in my head, I just picture Bigfoot going in there and just sitting down and just like, okay.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I got my apology. I'm gonna have some tea, and I will just go to bed. I didn't maul anybody. Camping industry's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Literally. Bigfoot's out here just like, I'm a bloody commodity. You guys should come out camping just to see me, okay?
Exactly.
But here you are, scared.
Bigfoot would be right, would be absolutely right. But nope, the camping industry does not call for Bigfoot at this time.
Yeah, pretty much.
They only bring out rumors of Bigfoot when it's like the off season, you know, just kind of like, oh yeah, Bigfoot comes out in winter. Why don't you come camp here and see if you can see him?
Exactly, and it's like, because that's Bigfoot's cousin, you know.
The Yeti. Yeah, and I named them all after the months.
Not Mark, because he's born in October.
Yeah. Do you know anyone named October? Or do you think like people are named?
There
October?
are people named October.
Yeah,
there's definitely someone for every single month.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, but his name is Mark.
Exactly.
I was trying to say that like Mark is like March, but then I'm like, nah, he was born in October.
Yeah. And Mark was born in Mach.
Yeah.
Okay, well that was fun. What part did you like writing most?
Probably when she was being a brat to everyone. Yeah.
Y'all are mean to me.
And she ran off and kicked the tree, and then Bigfoot's like, hey, that's just rude.
Look, you could be frustrated with everybody, but don't bring that to me. Do you know who I am? I'm a celebrity.
And then hopefully June learned her lesson by the end.
We all hope that June learned her lesson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what a brown noser is?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm hoping I didn't just make that up by mistake.
No.
It's real.
It's real.
Okay, well, let's read your story.
Get it.
So, the prompt for Kristen's story was, someone has the ability to fix anything that's broken with yarn, but it costs a piece of them every time. The story is called Threads of Redemption. All right, all fixed. Here you go, Voltia said to the customer, handing them their fixed rocking horse for their baby. That's amazing! It looks brand new! Please, take this. The man reached into his pockets and tried to pay Voltius, but he refused. Seeing your family happy like this and your child getting to enjoy their favorite toy is all the payment I need, he politely said with a smile as he escorted them out. Voltius stood in the doorway watching the family walk together down the road hand in hand. It made him sick. The smile dropped from his face and he shut the door. With a sigh, he walked back to his workbench and sat down, putting his hands in his face, taking a deep breath in, then exhaling. He pulled his hands back and looked at the missing fingernails. At this rate, I'll never reach peace, he sighed again. Voltius was a well-known young man a long time ago, but what he was known for was not something anyone would want. Well, anyone but him. He lived to torture people that he deemed to be beneath him. Whether it was mental torture or physical torture, he always squirmed in pleasure just knowing the agony he could cause them. Until one day, he tried to inflict that same agony on the wrong person. Many, many years ago, a young woman came to Voltius's manor looking for assistance. She was tired and hungry from traveling for days on end, having run out of food previously from bandits, as she explained. They had left her beaten and her clothing all tattered and torn. Voltius looked at her with the kindest eyes and offered out his hand to her. "Young miss, I would be honored to assist you," he said with the most purest of smiles. He had his servants tend to her, ensuring that she was washed, clothed, and then fed. Once she had been cleared up and her belly was full, she gave him a curtsy and thanked him. "You truly are a generous and kind man. I had been rejected by so many before, finding my way to you. I will now take my leave and continue on my journey." He smiled at her, and it turned into a grin, with his eyes arcing. "Oh, that would be absolutely rude of you, don't you think? I took you in, fed you, washed you, clothed you, and now you think you can just leave?" His words rang through the room as the servants turned to this woman with the most frightful of glances. Almost as if they were to say she should have never come here, and they were sorry for what might happen next. For days upon days and nights upon nights, Voltius had tortured this poor woman. He made her do the servant's work, and then would mess everything up again to get an excuse to beat her, then have her clean up her own blood. He contemplated how far he should go with her, but his issue was that she didn't seem to be writhing in pain the way the others did. She didn't seem to be against any of this. She simply did as she was told, and accepted the punishment received accordingly. This made him grow bored with her, and then he finally cleaned her up and said she repaid her debt and could leave. Upon making her way to the door to leave, she looked back at him. Her face was so radiant, and she smiled. "Thank you for taking me in. Let me repay you for all that you have done." She waved her hand, and he felt a shudder through his body. His bones felt strange, and his head was getting dizzy. Slowly, his eyes closed, and his mind faded to black. With a thud, he hit the floor and fell into a deep sleep. In his dream, he saw the woman standing there with a bright aura shining all around her. She turned to greet him and had that warm smile on her face. "Welcome, Voltius. My name is Elios. You have been quite the character, and I want to show you another way of living." Her voice echoed, but it was not overbearing or harsh. It was filled with mercy and compassion. Voltius was dumbfounded and angry. He began to shout at her. "What is this? What have you done to me? Is this some sort of sick joke?" He failed to see the irony of his own behavior, but that seemed to be normal for people of his kind, who could never handle a taste of their own medicine. She explained to him, "You have lived a very troubled life, causing others harm and enjoying every second of it. I have placed, let's call it a gift of inspiration. It is simple. You will learn the value of helping people by fixing things for them. However, you can only do so by plucking a string of yarn from your body." He pondered on this for a moment and tried to understand what she meant. Why does this sound more like a curse than a gift of inspiration, as you call it? How exactly do I pluck yarn from my body? He began to throw a fit, understandably so, as what she said to him made no sense. With a soft giggle, she responded to him, "It's simple. When you are helping someone fix something, you will remove a piece of yourself, as this gift has transformed your body into something more. Only once there remains no more strain can you find peace." Again, he looked at her with bewilderment at her statement. Before he could further question her, the light from her aura began to burst, and he opened his eyes. Looking around, he found himself in a strange building, not his own manor. It did not look run down, but it was definitely much more quaint than what he was used to. There was a table and chairs for dining, there was a workbench for crafts, and there was even an upstairs that led to a bedroom. Although it had all the makings of a decent home, it was very empty and lonely without the bustling servants fearing for their lives. Unsure of what to do, Voltius sat at the table, just thinking how to get back home. That was when the door opened, and a man rushed in. "Oh, thank goodness you are still open. I checked so many workshops, but they were all closed. I need you to repair this, and I can pick it up in the morning," the man said hurriedly, while putting down a large object wrapped in cloth. Voltius tried to stop the man, but it was too late. He had already left, and now this object sat by the door. Removing the cloth to see what it was, the man had brought a beautiful ornate wooden clock. Voltius picked it up and the pieces that were broken off to carry it over to the table. "Well, she did say I have the ability to fix things, so let's see what she's talking about," he muttered to himself. Remembering what she said, he was trying to find out how to take a piece of himself to fix this. After pinching his skin for about 30 minutes, not able to grab at any strings of yarn, as she put it, he was starting to give up. One last try. He took a deep breath and exhaled slowly with his eyes closed. He pictured a ball of yarn inside his body, made of a glowing golden light. Then, with his hands, began to perform the act of unwinding the yarn. As his hands began to move, he felt the very strange feeling that started off as a tingle, but then ended in excruciating pain. Upon opening his eyes, he could see that his fingernail was being ripped off by himself in the form of a thread. No blood came out from his finger. It just looked as if the fingernail was never part of it in the first place. Now holding onto this thread of light, he was unsure what to do with it. He experienced the terrifying pain that was associated, but now what? There were too many pieces to just wrap the string around and call it a day. He also did not want to let go of the yarn in case he wasted it, as he had no idea what the potential outcome could be. Would it reattach his fingernail if he doesn't use it? Will it be painful putting it back on the way it was being ripped off? He had to clear these thoughts from his head and focus on the object in front of him. He grabbed the thread and wrapped it around the clock, just so he at least had it in contact with the object he wanted to use it on, and then began thinking of what the clock would look like if it was whole. In the moment he had pieced it together, a bright flash flickered and the clock was in perfect condition. None of this makes any sense. Why did I even? His mind was spinning and the thoughts kept shifting. Voltius was never the type to help anyone without motive, so what compelled him to sit down and seriously look at this clock? His body felt so natural doing this, and he just went along. He did not particularly hate this, but he also did not like it. The next item on his mind was payment. Would he lure this person into being his friend just to torture them some more? Would he shatter it completely in front of them, showing them it was fixed for the emotional damage? As these thoughts went into his mind and he started to grin, the spot where his fingernail had been removed started to burn and turn black. He began screaming and he held his fingers, panicking to look for something cold. The pain distracted him enough that he stopped thinking about torturing the man, which in turn made the pain stop, but his finger remained black and singed. The next morning there was a knock on the door. Voltius quickly headed to answer it and was greeted by the man. "I'm so sorry, I was in a rush last night. My wife, she is very sick, and this clock was her favorite, so when it broke, I panicked, and I just want her to be surrounded by the things she loves, just in case." He had rambled with tears in his eyes. Voltius stopped him. "Shh, shh, shh. She may love the clock or any other object, but nothing would matter more to her than having you by her side in her time of need. Having someone that loves you, watch over you, is the only comfort one could need." He patted the man's shoulder and noticed that his singed finger had slowly begun healing. He insisted that the man take the clock and head back to his wife, then watched him set out towards the town. After the man left and Voltius closed the door, he felt this weird swirling in the pit of his stomach. Who was that? Nothing would matter more to her than having you by her side. Did I really just say such nonsense? Voltius was not used to giving this kind, caring type of advice. The voice echoed through his head. "You will remove a piece of yourself." I guess she meant that literally and figuratively. But I like who I am. Why do I have to change because some see it as wrong? He contemplated for a while. As time went on, Voltius had found this place to be very lonely. He was isolated from the people he knew before and the high society life that he had lived. Although this place seemed comfortable enough, there was no entertainment, or at least he was not invited to partake in any of it. In this land, his status was much lower, and therefore he was treated only as a repairman, and not the noble he once was. He steeled himself for what was to come, as he figured the only way to return to his place before, he would have to help everyone until he's exhausted all of that strange thread he envisioned dwelling within himself. Time went on, and he had tried to assist people with repairing things. He sat there looking at his hands, realizing that he's only lost his fingernails so far, and it would take an eternity to make it back if he had to completely unravel his entire being. To clear his head, he walked out of his home, taking a stroll to the lake. There was a slight sobbing in the distance, he could hear. The distant whimpers got louder and louder as he shuffled through the bushes and progressed towards the water. A small girl was sitting there holding onto her doll, crying into her knees. He cleared his throat. "What seems to be the matter, little one?" He tried to inquire without sounding awkward. The little girl halted her sobbing and looked up at him with red puppy eyes from her crying. My mother used to take me here on my birthday, but she went up into the sky, and now I'll never see her again." She began to hug her niece tightly. "I miss her so much. Daddy misses her so much." She put her head down into her knees again and whimpered. They sat there together on the lakeside in silence. The more he had helped people, the more a piece of his inner demons would be released, it seemed. He had slowly started feeling a little more than usual. Due to these feelings, he was more open-minded in trying to help other people. Closing his eyes, he imagined the ball of yarn again and plucked away a long thread. He felt as though he experienced the pain so many times that by now he had built up a resistance, as if he felt nothing this time. He took the thread, not even knowing what part of him went missing, and tied it around her wrist. A light flashed again, as it always had when using the string, and the girl stopped crying. "I know Mommy would not want me to be wasting my time being sad. I'll have to bring Daddy here to celebrate her birthdays together. We can put flowers in the water, and we can light little candles. It just suddenly feels like she'll always be here with us, no matter what." With that, Voltius smiled as the girl left, but he suddenly felt really tired and cold before passing out. Again, in the darkness, standing there with that dim light in the distance. The light zoomed up closer to him in almost an instant. I see you have learned a little bit more about compassion, Ilios said with a smile on her face. Why am I here again? What have I done now for you to punish me further? Voltius said with worry, as he was doing as he was told, but now ended up here. There is no punishment for you, dear Voltius. This was merely a learning experience to help you grow. Do you not realize what piece of yourself became the thread you tied around that girl's wrist? She placed her hand on his cheek, and he began to warm up. You gave up your heart to repair her broken one. You acted purely out of an interest in cheering her up. Her voice was soothing and sounded proud, like a mother watching their child grow. With another flash of light obscuring his vision, he opened his eyes and was back in his home. No time had passed since Ilios had originally left his manor. He placed his hand on his heart and felt the slightest heartbeat. With a sigh of relief, he headed straight to his room to get some rest. The next morning, he had started moving things around and shifted the decor of one of his rooms to match that of the place he had previously been in. He then called for the assistance of the servants. Please spread the word that we are welcoming anyone that needs anything repaired, he said with a smile. He closed his eyes and focused to see his inner self. And there it was in abundance, all of the strings of yarn unraveled and neatly strung out. The end.
The end.
Oh, I love that one. That one was awesome.
Ah!
So, like, was it supposed to be like a metaphor for him, like, unraveling the thread inside of him? He, like, as he was unraveling the thread, he was unraveling himself and, like, learning about himself and becoming better?
Exactly. So it was like a 2-for-1 deal. So basically, every time he lost a piece of himself, he was just losing the negative parts that people really couldn't handle. You know?
Yeah, so he was losing the parts of himself that I guess were bad.
Exactly.
And meant to, like, hurt people.
Yeah, right? So it's like, it's one of those things. And Elios is not quite a goddess in real mythology, but is a personification, a divine personification of mercy and compassion.
Oh.
So, yeah. So while they have, like, the Roman goddess counterpart, the actual ancient Greek Athens version, Elios, is just a personification, kind of.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, like, while something like Nyx, right? Nyx would be the nighttime.
Yeah.
And Erebus would be darkness, which are Elios's parents, technically.
Yeah.
They don't have characters associated with them most of the time. There's, like, very little drawings and things and depictions because people say, like, oh, the night is just Nyx. That's it. Done. That's it. So when you look at the sky, it's nighttime. That's Nyx. So Elios, I made them into a person just to teach a lesson, but they don't have an actual, like people know what, like, Zeus would look like from that section of mythology. People would know what, like, other gods would look like, but these aren't gods, you know?
So is Elios the name of a actual personification from mythology?
Yeah, from ancient Greek.
And it doesn't have, like, a picture?
Well, so they don't, technically. Basically, they would be the personification of mercy, clemency, compassion, and pity. And the counterpart of them in Roman mythology would be the goddess Clementia.
Okay. I don't know.
So basically, like, every single personification will have a Roman god or goddess counterpart that actually has, like, a statue or something like that.
Yeah.
Right? While over here in the ancient Athens and stuff, and in, you know, Greek, they just said, this is it. This is what it is. That's it.
Yeah.
So Elios literally just is compassion. So whenever you see compassion, it's like, Good Elios. Good work of Elios.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like that. Which I find to be super interesting. Just because it's like, you know, I've always liked all different sections of everything, mythology and whatever, and explanations and stuff like that, and gods and goddesses. I am familiar with Nyx, but I like that aspect. Either way, what I wanted to do with the story was have this personification of compassion and mercy show this character that mercy. She didn't kill him. She didn't do anything to him. She just took him into a place of his own, like, kind of like a dream almost.
Yeah.
To teach him a lesson. And when he was removing those threads, he didn't know what he was doing at first. He just did it because why not? He pulled a piece of part of his like fingernails because he wanted to leave. That's it. He wanted to leave. And the only way to leave is by unraveling this yarn ball and getting it finished. So that's why every time he pulled off a fingernail, he was in excruciating pain. And then when he thought about payment for his kind acts, it would start to singe and burn and turn into like this black because it's showing the damage. It's showing that this is what you sacrificed, and you sacrificed for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
But then when he gave the girl his heart, he didn't feel it because it was just a true act of sacrifice, that there was no pain involved. There was no nothing like that. It was just, I did this for you selflessly.
He just wanted to make her feel better. He wasn't really thinking about getting anything in return.
Exactly. That's why he thought he was just getting like a tolerance to the pain, but there actually just was no pain at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was so cute when he gave her his heart.
Right? Ah!
That was so cute. What was your favorite part of writing it?
My favorite part was basically just having him actually give up his heart, because that whole scene, I kind of felt it tied together the meaning of what everything was. Like it really threw together the idea of the story, and that was, you know, self-sacrifice is good sometimes, depending on like what you're doing, and we should be helping each other without thinking about what we get out of it, you know? And
yeah.
Just, you know, it just felt like a sweet moment, because sure, for him it was a little bit more intense in the fact that he had to go through that physical pain to even put him on the right track, like to actually motivate him a little bit more. Because if there was only like, hey, do this thing, and he doesn't, he'll just be himself, right? But when he removes those things and he feels that pain, it's kind of like all those years of torture that he put people through.
Yeah.
And he's getting it back.
Yeah.
So now that all his strings are unraveled and straightened out, when he uses them, they shouldn't cause him any problems. They shouldn't take any parts of his body. They should just be there to help people. That's it. Because the unraveling of the string means he's worked it all out. He's worked out everything internally, and he just wants to help now.
Yeah. Yeah. I really, really like that. I like the character development. I like that we both wrote stories where the character went through development.
Yes, exactly.
But yeah, I love the character development in this one.
Yeah.
My favorite part was probably when it was like he failed to see the irony of his own behavior that seemed to be normal for people of his kind who could never handle a taste of their own medicine.
Yeah, I thought everybody would like that, just because it's so true. You always have those people who are completely like,
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I like that. It sums it up perfectly. Never handle a taste of their own medicine.
Right? There's just too many people like that, and we've all been there, we've all felt it. So,
We've all felt it.
Yeah. Even the people who are those people have felt it from someone else who's just a slightly more that than them.
Yeah, it's this.
Right? So.
Yeah, no, that was awesome. That, yeah, no, I really liked it. Like the detail and the explanation of the yarn, how it works, the people that he met, the people that he helped. I liked it. Yeah, no, it was good. It's just I like it. I like that the yarn was inside him. Because the thing is, I wrote that prompt. I was like, I don't know what the hell this is. And then, yeah, it turned out really, really well.
Yay. Well, I'm glad. I hope everybody enjoyed listening to those as well, because, we put in a lot of everything, We put in some actual experience with people. We put in some of our dreams that we have. We put in a little bit of random splashes of art.
What?
Yeah.
Where?
Grabbing a little girl by her hair and throwing her over her shoulder.
That's art?
That's art for me. It's my favorite form of art. But yeah, so for next week, Michelle and I actually have something different that's going on. I wanted to try something, and she has agreement.
For the most part.
Yeah, so basically, what's going to happen is we are going to have secret prompts. So I won't tell Michelle what prompt, and Michelle won't tell me what prompt. We're going to write our own, but then the other person's going to read it with no expectations of what's going to happen. So for all you guys know, next week Michelle is going to read a story exposing herself from the time that she was... No. Yeah.
I'm waiting.
So we'll see how that one goes. And, I think it'll be fun because... So, do you know what you're going to be writing about?
Yes, I have an idea of what I want to write.
Good, right.
Yes. How about you? Do you have an idea of what you're going to write?
I do. I do. And I think it's going to be pretty.
So, is it a prompt that you came up with, or you just got, an idea?
I think it's more of I have an idea and I'll figure out the prompt itself afterwards.
Yeah.
Write a story about someone eating ice cream and the prompt will be person eats ice cream, turns into snow globe.
Yeah, it'll just be slurp, whoop, and then that's the end.
Exactly. It's wait, had that.
That's how you eat ice cream, right? Slurp.
Yeah. So we hope you all enjoyed listening to that. And, feel free to reach out to us on fabulistduo.podbean.com. You can hit up our Contact Us page and send us an email. Then we can get back to you, or we can, if you have any ideas you want us to go over, you can do that.
Yeah, send us any prompts you think are interesting that you want us to write, and we'll probably write them, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's it.
Yeah. So don't forget to keep on listening through either Google Podcasts, the Podbean app, Spotify, or on Listen Notes.
Yeah. See you guys next week. Thanks for listening.
Thanks all. Bye.
Bye.
Probably is that section when he does give the heart. Oh my god. There's a whole vehicle in the sky.
Yeah. Shoot it down.
Good, right? Right, good.
Yes.
Yes.